All right. Welcome back to the Copywriters podcast with your host, the world's greatest copywriting coach, David Garfinkel, and a very special guest today. So I'm just going to hand it over to you, David.
All right, Nathan, thanks, and good morning. So I've known our special guest today for more than 30 years, and I distinctly remember a seminar we gave at the Holiday Inn Express in Mill Valley, California, but for the life of me, I can't remember what we talked about. So let's meet him. His name is Tom Antion. My friend Tom Antion has never had a job. Think of that. But he's an internet millionaire, a guy next door, and he's been a professional speaker and entertainer since 1988. He says he's taught more professional speakers than anyone else alive, and he's the founder of the only licensed dedicated internet marketing school in the country, along with the only facility of its kind in the world, the Great Internet Marketing Retreat Center, where people come in from all over the world to study internet marketing. Yeah, Tom has a new podcast, which he invited me to be on, and we'll share that info with you when it comes. It's called Screw the Commute, and it teaches people how they could pretty much live two lives for the price of one if they weren't sitting in the car on the way to work making other people rich. Now, before we hear from Tom, I have to admit that I don't know if one of the things he teaches at his Internet Marketing Center is this: copy is powerful. You're responsible for how you use what you hear on this podcast. Most of the time, common sense is all you need. But if you make extreme claims, and if you're writing copy for highly regulated industries like health and finance and business opportunity, you may want to get a legal review after you write and before you start using your copy. My larger clients do this all the time. So Tom, welcome. Today you told me you're going to talk about what you call verbal copywriting. I think that's very cool. And to be 100% honest, I mean, we're both pretty honest people. I have no idea what it is. So what is
well, I also coined a term called 3D copywriting.
3D copywriting.
3D
okay.
copywriting, because when you get into verbal and interactions with people, either from the stage, which is I'm going to try to encourage people to get up there even if they're a little scared, or in networking meetings or in one-on-one conversations to get your business, there's a lot more that goes on than just the words. That everybody on this podcast is a wordsmith. They're excellent. They're the top of the heap at those. But if you don't combine them with these other elements of interpersonal interactions, you're going to have a tough time by just using words only. And I will be, I love your disclaimer there, but I will be teaching people today how to say outrageous things perfectly legitimately, never get in any trouble. And it's a great publicity generator for yourself too, because people grab on to outrageous claims, but if you don't explain immediately how it really works, then you look like a hypester. So I'll be doing that too as we go along today.
That sounds really good. So I know you're also a very skilled copywriter. When I was on your podcast, you talked about consult you had done with Corey Rudel and how it led to about $1 million in the sale of one product. That was
one page on the internet. Yeah.
Wow. So what's the first thing a copywriter, okay, this is like going to be maybe sound like a dumb question, but I think it's worthwhile asking. What's the first thing a copywriter should think about before they open their mouth?
Well, if they're in an interpersonal interaction, either one-on-one, trying to get a client, you have to pay attention to I'll call that the 1D, the words. But the 2D is the facial expressions and body language that you show. And the 3D is the whole things of what you do. For instance, when I do a speaking engagement, my motto is I want them to love me before I even get in the country that I'm speaking in.
Okay.
So something that I do, which would be one of the Ds, would be to offer to throw a pre-event webinar or pre-event teleclass to get everybody on board and excited about me coming. And I use a lot of, I don't know if you use the term Zeigarnik technique, but I
It's
don't
been a
know.
while. I know what it is. It's
Yeah.
like a cliffhanger
Exactly.
right.
So I might say something, but you never want to, when you're using a technique where you're doing a cliffhanger, you never want to seem like you're holding back and not giving, because people hate that. It's like the author that says, well, if you buy my book, you can read, the answer to that question. And then everybody hates that. So I use a lot of Zeigarnik technique, but in a nice way. So I might say, oh, hey, when you come to this event, I'm going to show you how to create a $50,000 video about you and your company for only pennies on the dollar. And there's all kinds of little techniques that you can get big government agencies to give you footage for free and everything. You got to be there and see this. It's going to take me 20 minutes to explain all this to you, but you got to see this because mine's made me $6 million so far. So they're like, and I didn't say anything other than the big concept. And they're wondering, how do we do that? How do we get one of those? So you created that demand before I even got in the country I'm speaking.
Yeah, that's really good, because I was listening to it and I was watching my excitement level go up as my more analytical mind was saying, well, what the hell is he talking about? But it works.
All right, and I always want to give extra value. What I just said there about the government agency, if you live in any kind of reasonably sized place, you have a Convention and Visitors Bureau, CVB, and their mandate is to bring people to your area, and they have all this video footage. I got probably $20,000 to $30,000 of video footage, aerial footage of Virginia Beach and everything, shopping and everything for free. I mean, I paid a few bucks to have it copied. And so that's just one thing on this whole production on how you do a $50,000 video for pennies. So again, there I said an outrageous thing, but then I came in and gave you an explanation to say, wow, that's true. That's credible. See? So when you put those two together, people love that, and you don't get in any trouble for outrageous claims.
Yeah. If I think about the copywriter's journey, it doesn't always go like this, but 9 times out of 10, it does. They start out, struggling to find anything, and then they're, working overtime with too many clients, and then they start to find a niche, and then they start to get some results. They get known, and they start to charge a little more and develop a sense of style, maybe even a brand or a differentiation. And then they say, sort of like your screw the commute thing, they say, well, I'm making all these other people rich by helping them sell their products, and I'm getting paid okay, but I could make a lot of money if I had a product. And then they develop a product, and then, I'm probably going to skip a few steps here, but eventually they end up speaking at one of your events, or an event you're speaking at, or like an event, the kind of event you speak at. And of course, that's where you told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, or elucidate upon it if I'm right, that you generally outsell everybody else from the platform when you're at an event where there's a lot of speakers with products. What are some basic things they need to know that maybe they can even use in other situations in selling from the platform in this 3D copywriting?
Yeah, well, pretty much in the past, 16, 18 years, I've never done less than 100,000 at the back of the room. And that's with maybe 200 to 300 people roughly, and maybe 16 to 20 other speakers on the program. And frequently I sell more than all of them put together. But one of the main things is you have to talk to people. You have to not be a diva. I love it. And another thing that I do is I go early and stay late. So I'm an accessible expert. I'm the guy next door. Just because I'm a multimillionaire doesn't mean that I'm not going to talk to you. In fact, one of my best clients was nobody would talk to him. He was dressed poorly. His teeth were ragged. And he was like a 5-time serious best-selling author. And nobody would talk to him. And he ended up paying me a fortune to help him with other stuff. See? So be accessible to people, and don't be the diva. Because I sit there and I'm watching every other speaker, and I see them blow in, and blow out with their entourage like they're big shots. And I'm like sitting there, I'm going to take your money. I'm taking it all home with me because you won't talk to anybody. So, so you go early, you stay late, and you still have interpersonal communication. See, the bulk of what I do isn't even on the stage. It's
you remind me right now of a story Dan Kennedy told about a speaker at a conference, and he's sitting there, and they're sitting in the round table in the hotels, and they're passing out the waiter comes up and passes out the dinner rolls, and then he gives everybody a pat of butter, and the speaker says, could I have another pat of butter? And the waiter says, no, just one per person. And he says, do you know who I am? I am the keynote speaker for this event. And the waiter says, do you know who I am? I'm the guy in charge of the butter.
Exactly. Right. I even have a person, I'm in hardcore in my old years. If I was at a luncheon with a big contract on the line and somebody treated like that, the waiter like that, I'd get up and leave. I don't need you anymore. I got to the place where, when you work for yourself your whole life, you pick and choose who you get to deal with. And
that is a luxury, right? I mean, that's
exactly
probably one of the best reasons to go into business is not only you don't hate the boss, but you don't hate the clients either. Right.
Right. So another thing that I do is scare tactics. And it sounds mean and it sounds ominous, but when I explain how I do it, it's clearly not. And when you mix scare tactics with features and benefits, which is kind of rudimentary for your crew here, but so scare tactic, the definition to me is I want you to know in no uncertain terms, there's consequences to you of not knowing what I know or having what I have. And so I might be on stage and point you out and say, hey, so right where you were sitting one time, somebody told me they spent $80,000 on a website without one visitor and one sale. I would never let that happen to you. Say I come in on the white horse. I'm not going to let that happen to you. So I show the negative, the scare things, and then I show the features and benefits, and a logical person will say, well, I don't want any of that bad stuff, and I want that good stuff. So a logical person, if the price is reasonable and all the other stars align, will buy your product. So you got to mix the scare thing. I watched an infomercial. Did you ever see one of these at Christmas time? They see these plastic candy canes out in front of somebody's yard, a big jar,
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what they were selling on this infomercial. And I was like, what is that thing? Well, it was something that you screw on the end of your hose, and then you can clean your gutters out with it. The entire commercial was people laying on the ground, broken legs, falling off ladders, and everything about it was scare tactics. Like, this is what's going to happen if you got to climb over your bushes to clean your gutters, So, and of course, you could get an extra one for just extra shipping and handling.
That's good.
So I do that from the stage, and I use superlatives. I call them superlatives, but whenever you can get yourself in a position where you can say, I'm the biggest, the best, the first, those kinds of terms. And I don't care if you have to start like I'm the first on my block, right? But if you can get those into your sales appeal, then you set yourself apart.
Yeah. So this is interesting as I'm hearing you. I know it's a good idea, and I'm not arguing with that, but what I am thinking is you have to put yourself in a different context, because these days Google AdWords will not let you use any superlatives.
Right. But remember, I'm talking about verbal.
I know.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to point out to our listeners, that what Tom is talking about, there's, a lot of the rules and principles are identical with what we talk about with copywriting, but there are different things that work with the spoken language, especially from the stage. And it's important. You can't really use fear, or you can't scare people in Facebook ads. It's right. I like to call it spiritual Prozac, the land of, nothing goes wrong on Facebook, right. Except another country takes over our elections, but that's okay. Please continue. I'm not criticizing what you're talking about. I just want to point out the difference, because some people who grew up mainly doing their copy on Facebook to a landing page or Google AdWords to a landing page, which is a perfectly viable channel, may not even realize you can do this or may be so conditioned not to do this, yet on stage it really works and it's okay.
Absolutely. And also, you got to go the extra mile. For instance, I was at an event one time where there was 500 people, and I'm doing what's called an early bird session. It was a 7 a.m. session. This is not good, all right, for my kind of entertaining, fun, upbeat speaking. So I'm thinking, oh man, this is not good. And it was a breakout session. I wasn't the main event. Yeah. So I skipped the meal, all right, which I don't skip too many meals, all right, but I skipped the banquet. There was 50 banquet tables. And I went and got, I'll simulate it here with this bottle.
Okay.
But if you go like this with a bottle, it crackles, right?
Right.
A lot of times there's these plastic cups that are hard plastic that crack and make a big noise.
Yeah.
So I went to each of 50 tables and I said, hey, watch this, folks. Look at this. I'm going to be your speaker in the morning tomorrow. And I put it under my armpit and I went like this. Ah! And it cracked and made a big crazy noise. Right? Everybody's cracked. Oh, just soaked my armpit. I broke the bottle.
That's outrageous. I mean, a lot of people might not have the predisposition to do something like that.
Well, the thing is I knew this is what being a professional is about, just in copywriting. Like I was hearing one of your students was doing a 2-part series on one of your episodes, Mr. Bacharach or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Bert Bacharach.
Yeah. Marin. We'll just call it Marin.
Yeah. And he was talking about, being a professional. He says, yeah, if they had a crappy copywriter, they probably wouldn't be annoyed by all these questions you're asking. But a good copywriter is going to dig deep, right? So a good person that wants to really excel on the stage is going to dig deep. And so everybody else is at one table with 10 people, sucking down the food, where I'm getting all 50 tables. And so here's the result. 6 a.m., it's standing room only. The meeting planner is freaking out because these people got up at 5 o'clock to come see me.
Wow.
And the room was not big enough. And she's begging me to do a second session in the afternoon. Change my flight. We'll pay you anything. Don't worry. See? So that's what I'm saying. And this is much bigger than copywriting, David. This is being a professional and going the extra mile compared to your competitors.
Oh, no, this is great. I mean, because you can write the best copy in the world, but if you can't promote yourself and get attention in a favorable way, who cares? I mean, unless you're going to be your only customer, you're going to write the letter on the left side of your desk and the right side of your desk, you write yourself a check. I mean, maybe Bill Gates could do that, but most of us can't, So no, that's great info. And I'm trying to remember what I was thinking about. Well, yeah, I know. So in terms of the water bottle under your arm while you're, cracking your head like a self-chiropractic or something, I saw, most of the memes I see on Facebook, if I had an actual trash can where I could pull them off the computer and throw them in, I would. But I saw a really good one, and it said, personal growth only begins at the end of your comfort zone. And so while I don't think everyone here is literally going to be going to events and trying your stunt, I do think people need to understand that just because it sounds uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong, or that you shouldn't find the own edge of your own comfort zone and push yourself, especially when you're doing events, because there is so much value in setting yourself apart in a memorable way, Well, the thing is, and I know a lot of people in this field are pretty much introverted. In fact, I am introverted. I live in a 7,500 square foot house, and I got a 4,000 foot TV studio, and by myself. It just so happens I got 25 dogs here today. So if you hear any barking, I also have a protection dog company. Okay.
So yeah, I understand that, but if you look bigger and you say, well, I want to make more money for my family. I want to make more money and do bigger things. Yeah. This is one avenue that you could pick that can accelerate you. It's like nitrous oxide to most businesses. Because if I can get in front of 300 or 400 prospects and come home with 100 $100,000 to $250,000 every single time. I mean, just think what that could mean to the people out there. And you don't have, you don't start like that. If you came home with an extra $1,000 from doing a speech at a church, great. That's $1,000. I came from, a 2-horse town in Western Pennsylvania, and $1,000 is $1,000. I don't care how rich I get, say. So I'm just saying that it could be a great thing. And I have a tip that's perfect for people that are introverted. And I imagine that a lot of people in your field, and I mean, I'm kind of in your field, but that's not my super profession is what you do, is in your mind when you're writing your copy, you're probably trying to articulate the copy of how it would be read in a conversational fashion in your mind.
True.
But that doesn't translate to actually saying it out loud in front of people. So that's where the disconnect comes. So we have people practice out loud all the time because your lips don't go where your mind is telling you all the time unless you practice. But I have a really super tip for people if they want to be more interesting instantly. All right. Is that too over the top? Is that
everybody wants? A lot of people need to, and some people who don't need to want to. I'm hoping I'm in the second category.
All right. Well, here's the tip. You in general, you emphasize the adjectives and the verbs when you say something. So, for instance, let's look around here. I got my podcast system here. I'm going to just say it in a factual way. I have a massive podcast system, and I really lay it on people when I do my podcast. All right, that's the facts of the thing.
Yeah,
all right, so now I'm going to say with emphasizing the adjectives and the verb. So I've got a massive podcast system, and I really lay it on people when I do my podcast.
Wow, that's such a difference, and you're right.
So and it's just a little. Once you get onto it, you don't even think about it anymore. But if you're just starting, okay, pick out the adjectives and pick out the verbs, and it doesn't work all the time, but just hit them harder, harder, harder. And all of a sudden, you're 3 times more interesting to listen to, just from voice inflection, regardless of the words.
That's really good. And I'm sure, I mean, a lot of people who aren't used to it speak in a very monotone way. And, one thing that's guaranteed to do is not stir a lot of emotions. And I can see why people might do that because they're afraid they might stir criticism, or it might, create anger or disgust in other people. But the fact is, most people, when you're on stage, and I'd love to know what you think about this. What I've found is most people on stage, except maybe for the other speakers, most people are rooting for you because they don't want to be bored. They don't want you to fail. They want to have a good, entertaining experience, hopefully valuable information, maybe even something that's going to change their business or their life. What do you think?
It's more than want. It's demanded in today's atmosphere that you put a percentage of appropriate entertainment value in. I mean, I have a 3-hour webinar teaching people how to use humor in speeches, and none of it's telling jokes. There's just so many ways you can use props and all kinds of things. I just read stuff from their own program, and people are rolling in the aisle. So anybody can really do
this. Really pretty laughable, right? And even if it's good, you can read it in a funny way. Well, that's pretty good. So any other tips? I know you've got tons of them.
Well, it's just you make them love you ahead of time, add extra value, meet and greet people. And this is where the 3D, the body language and the smiling and the way you say things come in. I mean, I could say it like this. Oh, I'm going to be on, David's going to have me on his podcast. Or I could say,
that seems a little like a teenage girl.
Yeah. Or I could say, David's going to have me on his podcast.
Yeah. I like that.
See, so all of that stuff plays in, and if you're not used to schmoozing and doing that stuff, it takes practice and thought to do that. But I just have to reemphasize the payback is so enormous. I mean, when you're willing to talk and get out in front of people, because you can only reach so many people with your, even online. I mean, I'm an online expert. That's what my expertise is. But every time I speak, boom, big, massive bursts of extra income, extra people into my system. So it's really worth it if somebody wants to stretch themselves a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. So 3D copywriting, could you go over what each D is? I know the first one is words again.
The first is words. The second is what you do. So remember, I went to those tables. I just didn't sit around. And 3 is your voice inflection and facial expression.
Okay, that's
all working together. If you can master that, the world is your oyster.
That sounds good. So if people want more info, you got a page or a link or
just go to screwthecommute.com. It leads to everything I have. In my podcast on Mondays, we do an in-depth training session on something that's either made me or saved me a fortune. And on Wednesdays and Fridays, we're quitting all the other interviews and just going to play yours over and over and over again.
Oh, that's good. I love it. I hope people don't get tired of hearing it when they hear the same interview the 7th time.
Well, but this is, I have identified copywriting as the most important business skill that I've gotten in my 40 plus years in business. Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. No question. There's nothing even close, because you can be the greatest. And I always say a great marketer will beat a great practitioner any day of the week. Now, it's a sad thing that that's the truth, but that's the way it is. So you could be the greatest of all in a certain category, but if somebody else tells everybody that they're the greatest over and over and over, you're not the greatest anymore.
Well, that's the reason you should play my
exactly
interview over and over again.
Right.
That's good. Well, Tom, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
This is really great.
It was really great talking to you and Nathan.
Yeah, Nathan, do you have anything to add before we sign off?
I just have one thing. You guys pretty much hit every note that I was about to bring up, but one thing that I really want to emphasize, and it's the idea, a lot of copywriters, and I've even seen people promote this idea that if you're a good copywriter, then you should be flooded with work because you know how to write your own sales letter and you know how to get people to, if you can get people to buy other people's product with a sales letter, you should be able to get people to buy you with a sales letter. And it's been my experience that most of my clients don't come from sales letters. Most of my clients don't come. I have my own products that I sell with sales letters, but most of my clients come from actual conversations with people and from recommendations from other people. So being a good copywriter doesn't mean that you're going to be an in-demand copywriter. You do need an extra skill, which you guys did a great job covering in this week's episode.
Oh,
yep, that's for sure. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it, and good. Well, yeah, check out the other ones too. You guys can see how valuable Tom is and how much fun he is. And, you know, if you got bottled water, you might want to hold on to it tight. Don't let him get his hands on it.
Okay, so definitely go check out Tom's website. You said that was screwthecommute.com.
Screwthecommute.com. Yep.
All right, screwthecommute.com. And of course, if you want to get more episodes of this podcast, check out copywriterspodcast.com. Until next time, we will catch you later.
Well, make sure that they review it, because I just did that before I got on here. I went and reviewed and gave a 5-star rating to your podcast.
Yeah. So please be sure to review it on iTunes. Thanks, Tom.